Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very, very special edition indeed of Wrestling with the Future. I'm your host, Angelo DeCipio, joined by the happy haberdasher, Dan the Man Sebastiano. Danny, how you doing, bud?
That's a great day, Angelo. Look at this. Look at this panel. How can it not be?
I'm telling you what. You know what? And you're here too. How about that shit? It's going to be a stellar evening indeed. It already is. It's amazing. I have to tell you, this is going to be something different for us. We're calling this our MMA UFC SuperShow. And we've got not one, not two, but three competitors. Two have already made their mark, and one who says, move over, kids, it's my turn now. So we got the two boys and a girl, and she says, there's a new chick in town. So we're going to introduce everybody. We've got, for the record, we've got Stephan Bonnar, who is a UFC Hall of Famer. He came to prominence a really striking way. Stephan Bonnar is a pro wrestler. He's a mixed martial artist. He came to fame as a runner-up in UFC's trial by fire called The Ultimate Fighter. His hair-trigger Ultimate Finale loss to Forrest Griffin is still today considered the most important fight in UFC history. Dubbed the American Psycho and Proficient as an expert in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, he has never lost a fight, not one fight by submission. Stephan Bonnar is my guest. Stephan, how are you, brother? Welcome to the show.
Doing all right.
I've got because you, before we went on the air, you met our lovely friend Katie Lee. Katie, for those of you who are joining as a returning guest, Katie is a North American Jiu-Jitsu champion. She is a two-tier athlete in track and field, and she is a national and international level competitive female bodybuilder.
Correct.
And she is here at her request. And how do you say no to a woman who could beat you up? So welcome back, Katie.
Right. Thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure and honor to be here.
Quite welcome. So, Dan, I know this is a show you were looking forward to. You got your guy here, Stephan Bonnar. I'm going to let you have right at it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm curious. Obviously, your pedigree is phenomenal. I'm curious the story behind the nickname RoboCop.
Oh boy, that was a good old Carlson Gracie. Carlson Sr. gave that to me. Where'd you go? There we are.
Oh, hello.
There you are. Back when I first started, actually, I was thinking of Blue Belt then. It was 2002 when Carlson Sr. moved up. And I was his MMA team. I was like the only guy who had any MMA fights. I just done my first two fights. And Senior moved up, and I had a big chest from a lot of weightlifting in my youth, and it stuck out of my gi, and that's where it reminded him of the movie RoboCop, and that's what made him call me that. Yeah, funny that you brought that one up.
It pops up from time to time, the AKA or fighting names or whatever, and I've never seen or heard the story. That's crazy.
That's it right there. Good old Senior. RoboCop, boy. Yep.
Stephan, one of the things we like to do on this show is a little different than a lot of sports shows. We like to talk about the human element. We're a wrestling and combat sports oriented show. But surprisingly, we do very little talking about actual fights. We do a lot of talking about people. I'm real interested in how you came to the fight game. Were you a fan of? I know you're clearly a wrestling fan, but what drew you into this thing called mixed martial arts?
Honestly, my lifelong goal was to become a big bad ninja. I had two older brothers that were pretty much better than everything at me. Than me, and on top of that, they were able to beat me up. So I thought, you can have your baseball and your football, but if I could kick your ass someday, that'll make everything all right. So I set out as a little kid to learn all the martial arts and become a big bad ninja. And I did that, Taekwondo and Pee Wee wrestling. When you're a little kid, that's all I had. I had to go a couple towns in each direction to those at the youth. And there was no MMA. There was no boxing gyms or some Muay Thai. And it wasn't until high school. And I grew up in the 80s and, Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior. And I wanted to be a pro wrestler. And, I kept going and doing my wrestling, my Taekwondo, and then high school in the 90s, the UFC came out, and I totally just fell in love with that. And I never thought I'd actually do it. I just wanted to, keep learning the martial arts and know everything. And one thing led to another, and it ended up turning into a job.
I'm telling you what, and one hell of a job it is. I got to ask you, you and I were introduced to our mutual friend, Matt Granahan. How did you hook up with the Granimal?
Oh, boy. How did I hook up with him?
I figured there was an old boy coming, bro.
I met him through the NYBABY, the New York baby, Phil Baroni. My former tag team partner introduced me to him, actually. So, and Phil Baroni's like a jealous girl. As soon as Granahan got me a wrestling gig, he got all butthurt and jealous and playing like a little. And yes, so now me and Baroni are broken up. Granahan, Baroni's like a girl. You have to break up with him. And
well, I got to tell you, we had Phil Baroni booked for the show. And conveniently, he bowed out at the last minute. In fact, he didn't answer his phone.
Not the most reliable guy. Well, never.
Matt's message is already on the air. Yeah. So I'm gonna let Katie Lee have at it. Katie, you've been chomping at this for a few days now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, kid. It's all yours.
You're talking about how I got into the martial art realm from, I guess, bodybuilding. Is that what you're asking? How I transitioned over?
No, I want you to talk to Stephan.
Oh! I thought you were asking.
Ask questions.
I mean, where do I start? I mean,
I know how you transitioned over. I want you to. You got your guy here. Go ahead. Go for it.
I mean, I guess I could just get advice at this point. Like how you get to that high level. I've gotten pretty far in bodybuilding in a pretty short time. So I definitely know how to put in the work, but if there's any type of, secrets, advice, just something that can kind of catapult into that, mixed martial art realm. I'm training at MMA Sport, so I have a home gym here that's definitely holding it down for me. So just advice, from the greats.
Well, Stephan, Katie brings up a good point. She brings up a good point. There used to be a time where training schools were plentiful, and there were a number of people who had the time put in and experience that could work with you and bring you along. Now it's everybody who's got a few dollars that can open up a door somewhere has a training school.
Mm-hmm.
How do you separate the wheat from the chaff over here and and know that you're headed in the right direction? I mean, it's like in pro wrestling. There are, I mean, Dan, how many thousands of wrestling schools?
Oh, yeah.
And how many are any good? I guess that's really what we're getting at is, how do you know? Like the
beauty of MMA is, unlike wrestling, if you win fights, it doesn't matter if people like you or not, or, if you're good and you win, you're going to advance. So probably most important thing to find good train partners that aren't going to hurt you. I probably left a couple good years in the gym because we really didn't know how to train. I just go around train with everyone and people would try to kill you. And it wasn't until at the end of my career, I got a little smarter about who I train with. So definitely with people who aren't trying to kill you and hurt you, and it could save you from a lot of surgery, injuries, and from leaving some valuable years in the gym. But other than that, as long as you go in those fights healthy and, well, as healthy as possible, but do your absolute best. That's all I ever did was, just to say, God, don't help me win. God, just help me do my best in there, and that's all I wanted to do. And as long as I did that, I never really felt bad about losing. You know, most of my losses it ended up with my hands with a smile anyway. So I did my best.
Interesting. So right along those lines, one of the things you heard me say at the beginning of the show, right at the top, in fact, was you've never lost a fight to submission. That's pretty remarkable, bro. I mean, that's really remarkable.
I mean, I've been hit a lot, but the only shot I've ever acknowledged was that one from Anderson. It was right to the solar plexus. Not much you can do about that. Guy knees like a mule. The funny thing was he was punching me, and his punches aren't too hard. So I was like, oh, my God, like, I'm going to go the distance. And right when I got all excited and thought, like, you know, wasn't going to stop me, the fight was over. So,
damn.
It's like,
go ahead, Dan.
Well, I guess. Well, then let me ask you that. You talk about, you know, you mentioned obviously, you know, you do have the occasional loss. Your first one was to Lyoto Machida, and he really revolutionized bringing karate, straight karate, into what became mixed martial arts. To kind of expand on Katie's question. You know, their styles are constantly evolving. How do you go about, if you're breaking into the business, you're trying to start from the ground up, to train for really what a style that's not going to exist by the time you have your first fight?
Yeah, see, those are anomalies. Those are really, really hard. Like Machida, I was training a lot then. I just won a Golden Gloves title in Chicago, and you know, I was confident. I was winning fights, and after I fought him, I was like, man, either I was wrong about where I'm at, or that guy was really freaking good, you know? And sure enough, I go back home and, you know, oh, Bonnar lost, so it's terrible. And, you know, you feel bad and kind of dejected. You go to your school as a loser. And, you know, then his very next fight, he fought Rich Franklin and knocked him out nasty. And I said, see, you know, and then he went on to win the title. And it was kind of like the John Jones thing after that fight, doing interviews about how bad and how I lost to this rookie. And then I remember doing interviews defending myself, saying, hey, you know what? You're going to see that guy's pretty good. Like, yeah, I may have lost the 29-28 decision, and he is young and green, but that dude has a fucking crazy frame for 205 and an insane amount of athleticism. And sure enough, he did. So those are the two guys that I really felt like that, though. You know, I've been there with some good guys, but with Machida and with John Jones, it was like, wow, like these guys are really talented. Anderson Silva kind of lulled me to sleep and tricked me into thinking this wasn't going to be too bad, and then the fight was over. So it's like he kind of deceived me. Whereas Machida, Jones, it was kind of like wow, I saw their potential in there.
You talk about the size of a guy's frame, 205 and a solid frame. Here's a question for you. We have a woman here that's obviously clearly a professional bodybuilder. In the octagon, does that muscle go against you, or does it work for you? Does it work with you, Stephan?
It's how cardio to back it up. You know, if you could go hard for those 5-minute rounds, that's it. I notice athletes who are really fast twitch and explosive, like your Vitors or your Yoel Romeros, they do better when they fight in different gears. If they kind of have a moderate kind of pace gear and then the super fast. But when they try to go super fast and hit you with everything all the time, with that body type, I notice they fatigue and tend to fade later. So you see that I was more of a slow twitch guy, ran cross country.
Absolutely.
So I always had trouble with the explosive vertical jump and those kind of things. But I noticed with guys who are kind of more talented in that fast twitch explosive area, they do better if they kind of conserve some of that different speeds. Where my style is I kind of go 100% because it's like I'm not as.
Well, you know, it's balls to the walls or go big or go home. You know, in a lot of cases.
Well, you got with what you got, and if you got some more of those type 2 fibers that don't require a lot of oxygen, then you got to be smart.
And that's a real good point too. I've been following this for a long time. One of the first people that drew me to the sport was Ken Shamrock, who later in life I got to know, and I'm proud to say I know him now. He's a friend. And Kenny was always solid. He was always, very muscle dense. And that worked against him initially until he learned to work his cardio. But he lost a lot of fights, not because he just lost, because he, like we say in wrestling, blown up. You start sucking air, 3 or 4 minutes into your fight, you're in trouble. You're in a lot of trouble. And then on the other hand, you got guys, Stephan, you got guys like Chuck Liddell, who doesn't look imposing until he starts cracking you. And then you have a whole nother level of respect for the guy. But go ahead, Dan, pick up on that.
Well, no, that's a fair point. I know that was actually the first interview after UFC 1. They asked Ken Shamrock had won the first fight in the tournament, and they asked him about how it felt compared to like Pancrase and the other places, and he said it was easy because these, that was back when half your roster was just, the mullet looked like guys you pick up at a biker bar on the way to the arena, and he's like, these guys don't know submissions, they don't know the ground, and then he got in the ring with kick, with Royce Gracie and got choked out, and it was like, oh shit, okay. So like you said, I guess to expand on that, then you talk points. Is there, because there's been some high profile cases of people changing weight classes, being very successful, maybe not so much. Is there a advice you would give to somebody who's maybe right on the edge of a weight class to jump up or down for that kind of training?
Good question. Good question.
From what I've seen is usually when people drop down that first time fighting at the new weight, that's when you want to fight them. That's when they're going to have the roughest time making weight, and their best chance of being beat. And a lot of people don't realize, too, your brain's suspended in water. You cut too much, and you see that guys that drop too much weight. And you saw that with TJ Dillashaw. When he got knocked out, your brain's suspended in water. You can't take a punch as well when you cut too much weight. And a lot of guys don't realize that, too. They figure, I can go down, I can make the weight. But they don't realize, I can't take a punch the way I did when I was a little bit heavier. And then they find that out in there the hard way. And I've seen that happen just tons of times. Too many times to count.
Something you don't think about right there.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about something that I've been thinking about for a long fucking time. This match that you had, this incredibly arduous fight with Forrest Griffin. I got to go back in time, okay? Because I got a couple of issues here. First of all, I think he got robbed, okay? First, I think he got robbed. That's my personal... Don't shake your head, Dan. I'm telling you, that was Bonnar's fight. It was his to take home. He got screwed. Okay. I don't care I don't know if the ref was in on it. Somebody got paid off.
Your inner booker is showing, Angelo.
Was in hand. Trust me. Let's seriously though. Let's talk about that. That was a hell of a fight. That fight, in many ways, even now, affects the way UFC fights are regarded. That was such an intensely crazy, I want to say professional, but it was a respectful fight. You guys knew at any given moment, one of you were going to win, one was going to lose. When you're in a fight for your life and the stakes are that high, do you take anything, even as minuscule and minute as you may think it? Do you take anything for granted?
Well, looking back on that fight, I had to lose for the story to play out and have the feel-good ending that it had. I know that now. had I gotten the decision, we all know now, we didn't know then, Forrest does not take losses too well. And a little bitter, might have ran out of the room cage crying, and it would have left a terrible taste in people's mouths.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have done what it had done for the sport. So really, like, in order for the happy moment, that had to be a gracious loser, and it had to be a feel-good ending. And that needed to happen that night to really put the sport over. And that's what happened. And looking back and knowing that now is like, geez, like, yeah, sure, it would have been nice to win and be the winner.
I'll tell you what, Stephan, the feel-good
might have happened, and the way it would have turned people off, thank God I didn't win that night.
You know, in retrospect, you're absolutely right. But I'll tell you what, the feel-good moment for me as a spectator and fan of the sport was when both of you guys were awarded contracts. That, to me, that was it. That was justice. That was fair. That was fair, for real.
Yeah, and it was easy to do because I was smiling, hugging him, lifting up his hand. If they had to go, hey, Forrest, come back in the ring and accept your contract too. It wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fair.
Tito, Forrest, come back. You won the split decision. You won.
Exactly right. Let's talk about that first Ultimate Fighter season. The UFC took a chance. They didn't know what they had, and they really didn't, probably for the first couple seasons. They really didn't realize what they had. But out of that came names like Rashad Evans, Evan Tanner, Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonnar. I mean, the list goes on. Some of the most incredible fighters in UFC history came out of that first 3 or 4 seasons. I mean, remarkably, and you had real drama. I mean, when you see people like Tito Ortiz and Ken Shamrock each coaching a team and realize they got straight up legit heat with each other, that raises the stakes not only for the two coaches, but for the two teams, for each individual guy on these teams. How did that affect you in season 1, being with a coach that you really, had to become familiar with as time went on? How did that work for you?
It was weird. For some reason, I fully believe from the bottom of my heart that this would just be a revolutionary show and it would be a huge success. But no one else really did. Even the crew, a lot of people, the crew never thought the show would see the light of day. A lot of it because it was unorganized in terms of they didn't know what they could do and what they couldn't. So they kept changing from day to day. That's why Dana's "Do you want to be a effing fighter?" speech happened, because they were like, well, we can't fight because if we do have fights, we got to report it to the athletic commission. So we're just going to eliminate you through challenges. So you don't got to worry about making weight. Okay, great. We all go and eat. And the next day they're like, oh, we can't have fights. You're going to be exhibitions. That way we don't have to tell the athletic commission. So they were just shooting from the hip, trying to figure it out as they went along. And they didn't think they were going to be able to fight. And then they had to pull strings to get that done. So there was a lot of doubts about the show, if it even would air, if it would be a success or that. But I don't know. For some reason, I just had this feeling that it would be. And looking back on it, it was, I don't know if I was just lucky to be thinking that way and got lucky, or if I knew something, intuition. But looking back on a lot of what the people on the show were saying, no one else really believed in it, and even the Fertittas in that. I remember, was it. I remember Dana was really worried. Even the night I fought Forrest, he was really sweating and nervous, and thought that was going to be it, because he was like, Frank and Lorenzo are done. There's 60 million in the hole, and they're done with this. This is it. And there were no other talks of season 2, 3, and 4 until that fight. So, yeah, no one really knew much. It was a lot of question marks, a lot of stones that were unturned. And really, it's funny. You never know what's going to work. But I remember there was another show at the time called The Contender about boxing, and I actually tried out for that show.
Yeah.
And hosted by Stallone and Sugar Ray, and a lot of money put into it by NBC.
My
And
God,
it was a total, because they kind of tried to force the issue of the families and what these guys are fighting for. Whereas in the UFC show, they just kind of set the cameras up and stepped back and said, "Uh-oh, like, fuck, I don't know what the fuck happened."
What the problem was, Stephan? The problem with
it's natural, and that's why people
exactly the problem with The Contender, and I thought it had a shot the first 1 or 2 episodes, but when I realized that it was totally inorganic, I realized this thing's going to take a shit. Exactly. That show is going to take a shit big time. But I think you're absolutely on to something when you talk about the organic growth, the natural development of the Ultimate Fighter. Now, Katie Lee, I know that you were a fan from day one, so here's your opportunity to talk to one of the best in the business. Go for it. Ask away, kiddo.
Ask away. I mean, there's a little bit of an age difference, I think, here, so I might be a little out of like the generation, but I do remember your fight with Forrest Griffin for sure. And that's probably what sparked my interest in the very beginning. But then I found bodybuilding, and it's like you can't do both. You know what I'm saying? Bodybuilding's all or nothing. You can't like do MMA and bodybuilding.
Katie, can I interrupt you for a second, just for half a second? Because I'm so unaccustomed to doing this. Dan, shut your fucking mouth. Here's the thing, though, Katie. I've seen your jiu-jitsu, and you're really good. You're really good. And I've seen you working out with your trainer, and I'll tell you, I would really love for Stephan to see some of your stuff. I really would. And I'm not just putting you over because he's here, because you really are good. Stephan, you got to see her work. She's good. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Ask away.
No, it's okay. So yeah, I mean, you can't do both, obviously, bodybuilding and MMA. So now that I've kind of gotten into the MMA side, I'll be 34 in like 2 weeks. So I don't even know if that's like too old to even really pursue this, or if it's kind of just like, okay, you've had your bodybuilding run, you got, your pro card, all that fun stuff. Like, is it too late for me to start? Like, is it even worth it? But
a lot of it's mileage, okay. So there's some like the Randy Coutures or Murray Smiths of the world who never had a serious injury or broke a bone. And then there's me. I've had like 10 surgeries, broken 20 bones, just a lot of mileage, a lot of wear and tear.
Okay.
Same with a lot of shots of that too. I mean, sounds like you're a 34 with relatively low mileage. Your brain hasn't taken an awful lot of trauma, and you haven't had a lot of surgery and wear and tear on your joints. So that's low mileage 34. I'd say if you feel good in your low mileage, then run with it. Run with it until I was feeling in there like, oh my God, like I can't get out of the way I used to from getting hit. I'm not as strong. Like I could feel my speed go. I wasn't too fast to begin with, so I could feel the deterioration come in.
Right.
So as long as you're not feeling that, and I could feel the brain too. I took a little too much damage there. So once I got around 40, it was starting to shut things down.
Yeah, I think I'll just keep going. I mean, bodybuilding, you take some damage just from the heavy weight over all these years, and I definitely like lifted to the max. So some lower back stuff and just normal joint pain, from lifting and going so heavy for so long. But now that you mentioned the muscle thing, it's like, I don't know, do you really want to lose some muscle mass to make yourself, a little more, I guess, faster?
Well, Katie, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Stephan, is that a potential risk factor that if Katie gets into this MMA full swing, that she's going to reduce, her muscle mass size?
Your body will adjust, though. In order to make it and push through 5-minute rounds hard, your body will tell you, like, hey, I need to get rid of some muscle. And your body's really smart, and it's an adaptive unit. I swear, like, I've been fighting and making 205 for so long, I really wouldn't even do too much. My body would just get down close enough to the weight by fight day where, the week of the fight, I just cut the water. But other than that, I didn't really miss a meal or diet. But your body is smart. Your body.
That's a good point. That's a real good point, Stephan. If you'll look behind me, Stephan, there's a photo of you. I chose that photo specifically. You're shredded in that picture. You're doing one of those. You're doing a Katie Lee deal.
Yeah, it looks like an abs and thighs pose.
Yeah, I'll step to the side here for a second. There's the photo. That photo is interesting because that's a weigh-in photo. Tell me what's happening there. And did you have
the movie where he's with the hookers, but he's looking in the mirror and flexing? That's the pose.
Yeah. I heard a little bit more about that photo.
I cut it out 20 pounds of water, and that's as ripped as you're gonna look. You're never gonna look defined as an MMA fighter than that when you just sweat out all your weight and step on that scale. So when pose.
And if we move this way, we can see our friend Pat Militic and Katie Lee there. I wanted to ask you specifically about that photo because it took place at a weigh-in, and they tell me that you had a bit of an issue making weight for that weigh-in. What were the issues leading up to that weigh-in? What happened?
No, I never had issues making weight. Never.
Oh, okay.
It was tough. I had to really dehydrate myself. I felt like I was gonna pass out, Okay. But it was. Just cut. It's like I cut about 20 pounds in a day. So it's you're lightheaded, you're dizzy, you're hard. Take that weight.
Yeah.
Dan the man, you have to explore this. You and I talked about this, Dan. We're both fans, of course, of the initial Ultimate Fighter, and one of the things that we talked about, Dan, was how these guys had to cut such drastic weight in such a short period of time. I want you and Stephan to have that conversation.
Well, what you just said right there, 28 pounds in a day. I mean, that's for people that's
crazy.
would go on a diet or exercise. I mean, obviously you've got an MMA Hall of Famer and a former bodybuilder, two extreme, both with their extreme stories of cutting water. I mean, I guess my question is for the layman at home, somebody who goes on a diet and runs on the treadmill and does a typical, maybe loses a pound or two a month. How do you lose 28 pounds in a day?
And keep your sanity.
Right. I mean, I know you said it clearly affects the brain, but what's the process from wake up to weigh in to shave that much weight that quickly?
Yeah, I mean it varies, but up like the older I got, kind of the harder it got. Whereas like my Tito fight, it didn't come off as easy, and I had to get like. I got 19 off in 8 hours. It's like a record. But, really, it's will. It's your mind. It's saying, hey, if I don't make the weight, I'm either not going to fight or I'm going to give this jerk off 20% of my purse. So, like, you got to, not making it isn't an option. So, you get it done. But
I'm sorry. You just said
water. So you got to come close to killing yourself is a secret. There's albaline, there's sauna suits, there's different things you could do. I mean, I did everything, and it still wasn't coming off. So up until you had to go to the arena and report and all that, up until the time they called my name out, I was in the back running bleachers with plastics on. I was still old. So, but that was it. I've never missed weight. Even once, where I had to come back and weigh again, I've always made weight every single fight of my career.
That's nuts. Katie, you're shaking your head in the affirmative, like you've been through this.
Yeah, I wouldn't say in 28 days. We do a little more gradual cut. Typically 16 weeks is a prep, depending on how fat you coming from your off season. But yeah, the whole cutting water, it's really miserable. And I mean, they do it, I think, even further than we do it. Because again, we do it in 2-3 nights, maybe a week out, we'll start cutting water, cutting back. But that 24-hour frame, and even like the day of the show, it's like you said, your brain does not work. Like,
Katie, that you said something very important just now. It ties into what Stephan said a moment ago. And it's kind of a dichotomy between the two worlds that you come from. Stephan and other MMA fighters, they will cut weight up until the moment of a fight sometimes. In bodybuilding, I've seen male and female bodybuilders do this. They will grab handfuls of junk food.
Oh, yeah.
And just like carb load, like fucking crazy. What's the idea? What's the sense behind that? What does that do?
I never took that approach. My coaches did not have me carb up with like really bad food. If anything, it was like a steak and potato or maybe a burger and fries, but it's not loaded with bacon and cheese and stuff. It's just everything that you need, which is protein and carbs. So I never.
Well, what's the purpose behind it? Why did they do that?
Well, because they have no water in their system. So in order to pop the muscle to the surface of the skin, you're going to need to fill the muscle with glycogen. Carbs is what does it. So that's why that's what we want to do, is basically take all the water from the surface of the skin and pop the muscle through the skin as much as possible. And you do that by having your muscle bellies full, and you do that by carving up and having no water.
Is that where that veiny look comes from, that vascular look?
Yes and no. I mean, everybody's programming is a little different. Unfortunately, in bodybuilding, we talked about this. Some people are doing certain supplements that other people may not be doing. So the vascularity could be a lot stronger on one individual than the other, depending on, their protocol and what they're following. But I mean, I had old school coaches, she's a 2-time Olympic medal holder. Like, she just took the very subtle, slow and steady approach versus because I'm not having those foods for 16 weeks. So what if you throw that back into my diet the day before a show? How's my body going to react? I could hold on to water. It could spill over. I had that happen a show where you completely spill over. You have a very small window to capitalize on that, peak of the show. So if you spill over, you look like a water buffalo, and you might as well just, smile and wave and keep walking off the stage, So that's just my approach. We just took it slow and steady. And if you're in shape, you don't have to cut drastically. That's the whole point. You want to be in shape the day of the show, so you don't have to do this drastic, taking diuretics like nonstop, just, it's not necessary. You should be in shape before that.
Stephan, let's talk about today's game, today's MMA. It's a very different looking sport than it was 15, 20 years ago. What's missing from the game today? What is essentially missing?
I mean, the sport's evolved a lot. I mean, we've had MMA gyms pop up all over the world, actually, since 2005, and access to high quality training is, even when I was on the Ultimate Fighter in 2005, like, I was driving around from Chicago to West Indiana to Miguel Scors's school to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Duke Rufus. Like, now you could just go in one gym and get it all. So I think overall got it a lot easier in terms of finding the good technique and quality coaches and training partners, because like jiu-jitsu was a big secret back when I started. Like, people didn't know it. But the main hole I see in people's games now, I feel like everyone's been pretty athletic and got pretty strong hips and could defend takedowns well and get back to their feet well and throw hard punches. But the main holes I see aren't just the subtleties of the technique of the jiu-jitsu on the ground, because you could be sloppy and sweat and be explosive and get out of bad position or hold off for the round to the end where you don't have a gi on. So you could be a little sloppier and get away with holes on the ground where, like, in a nutshell, the biggest weaknesses I see in people's games are that everyone has strong hips, everyone's good at throwing hard punches and sprawling, brawling, it seems, but
Stephan, I'm going to throw you a curveball. Dan and I talked about this the other night. Where the hell did Bruce Buffer come up with "It's time"?
You got me.
Go ahead, take it.
Go ahead.
No, that was we got into hypes and announcing, and don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of the fights and the moments, but "It's time" has got to be the worst catchphrase intro to a fight I've compared to some of the famous announcers from Let's Get Ready to Rumble. The crowds, some of the crowd calls. I was just curious where that came from, if that was something tied to the sport or not, but.
He couldn't steal his brother's catchphrase. So.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, kind of circle back a point you had made. You were talking about with the gyms popping up in the 70s and 80s as contact. What would become contact karate and contact martial arts started really becoming popular. You had a trend they called the Mick Dojo. These hacks that with either fake credentials or guys get a black belt in a year and a half. Is there to kind of circle back to the original question about how you can find the good crew versus the good gyms and all? Is there a trend like that? Is that something that someone like Katie would have to look out for, where you might have somebody with credentials or a history that's you have frauds out there basically that see the money in running a martial arts gym and just go with it, even though they're not qualified to train people at all?
Well, Dan, it's a lot like the wrestling schools. I'm sure Stephan can speak on that.
Yeah, well, the thing about martial arts and fighting is there's less of those schools nowadays because people have to back it up. Like I did a little thing back in Chicago with George Dillman, who taught the no-touch knockout, which was a total fraud. And and he had a hoax. And he had
remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember.
That was the beauty about the sport of MMA kind of evolving, coming out. I think a lot of those schools have fallen off, like a lot of those old McDojo type schools, because people know what works now and what doesn't. Like when the UFC came out, I was so excited. Like finally, there's some proof onto what works, because like I knew from being in fights and scrapping and that wrestling had some place, because I did wrestling and taekwondo. I didn't know boxing was nearly as an effective a martial art as it was until the UFC proved it to me and I started training it. So, I think the explosion of MMA kind of did us a huge favor by putting down some of those arguments and putting to sleep some of those good bullshit martial arts that, had schools that did well, that people supported themselves teaching crap.
Mm-hmm.
Stephan, when Matt was here with me last week, we had an interesting conversation about why Pride Fighting and Bushido didn't make it here in the U.S. He had an interesting theory. He said the U.S. market wasn't ready for that level of entertainment and fight mix. But yet we've had professional wrestling for years and years, and nobody seemed to have a problem with that. Why, in your opinion, did Pride and Bushido not make it here?
Because the UFC bought them and squashed them. Remember, UFC and Pride were kind of neck and neck. Even when I was on the Ultimate Fighter, guys still had options. Like, all right, well, I got cut from the UFC. I'm going to Pride now. Like Phil Baroni, I remember him. Got cut from the UFC, went to Pride. He did well over there.
Yeah.
Then the UFC bought him out. I remember I was so excited because I loved Pride. I thought for sure they were going to keep it going because they did well. I mean, they had like 60,000 people inside Thomas Super Arena. And, hey, keep it going. It's some revenue stream for them. But no, like they bought it just to kill it. So, UFC bought it.
Stephan, where have we seen that before? It sounds like Vince McMahon buying out WCW.
Yes.
Exactly. Go ahead, Dan.
Let me ask you. You were talking about
that look, Dan.
Well, no, I'm just thinking. I was wanted to circle back again to kind of a comment you had made, and you talked about you had auditioned for the Contender. How did you go about getting booked for the Ultimate Fighter? Was that open tryouts? Did you have to send in tapes? And kind of expand on that to someone. How would somebody who's trying to break into the business get noticed the way you guys did?
Yeah, I heard about the show at the jiu-jitsu school, and I thought they were talking about the Contender because I told the guys, oh, yeah, I already tried out for that. They're like, no, the Ultimate Fighter's having a reality show. And I remember going home online and seeing that they were and seeing the audition tapes were due. So, yeah, I put my fights on a tape and then and sent it in along with like just like this, me holding the camera up. Hi, I'm Stephan Bonnar from Chicago and blah, blah, blah. And that's it. I sent that off and got a call a couple weeks later. And that's all it took to get me out to Castings Week in Las Vegas. Before I go, though, I got to plug this show. I'm going to be on next week.
Yeah.
I got to go teach at my gym. But next week down in Texas, at Wrestling Expo, August 28th and 29th, the NITEX Sports Center in Richland Hills, Texas. Jake the Snake's going to be there. Nick Atlas, Jeff Cobb. I got a tag team match with Chad Box for Jane Stratmore and Apex. So I definitely wanted to get that plug out. That's next weekend, Independent Wrestling Expo down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Beautiful. Thank you, Stephan. Stephan, listen, my friend, you are welcome back here anytime. I appreciate you. I know you have to run on us, but take care, and we will we'll definitely have you. We're definitely going to have you back. I know it. There you go. Here we go. Here he is. So, yeah, I wanted to give you a holler real quick. I thought you got in your car and left. But I know that you have just a limited time with us tonight. So, but I do want to thank you for being here. I'd love to have you come back and maybe talk some wrestling with us next time out.
Yeah, for sure. I just got a class at 6, about a half-hour drive. So, yeah, I'd love to come back. Thanks for having me, and nice talking to you, Katie.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, she's a huge Bonnar fan. Huge.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Take care, Steph.
Take care. This was fun.
Stephan Bonnar, everybody. One of the best.
Absolutely.
That was great. I'll tell you what, he is a character.
Yeah.
You know what? And one of the things, and I meant it when I said it, I really don't think that he got his just due initially, but to hear him explain just that little nuance of it would not have had, and Dan, we talk about this all the time in wrestling. Yeah. It would not have had that same impact, that feel-good moment needed to happen. Like he said, it needed to happen.
Yeah, no, it's that we've talked about it a lot on the show, that happy accident, and sometimes it works out. He's absolutely right. As much as I respect him as a fighter, Forrest Griffin does have a bad reputation for not taking losses well. And if he had
that's the truth.
And if he had the fact that you had these two guys, they embraced, it was like, look, we literally were in here beating each other to death. We're going to do this. That moment, it almost, I hate to use the comparison. He talked about the Contender with Stallone, like the original Rocky wouldn't have worked if he had won the first fight.
Nope.
The story of him going the distance but not figuring it out what's important,
being the graceful loser. If that happens, it's a whole different story.
Exactly, and I think he's absolutely right. And I responded that I would never have thought that if Forrest Griffin pouts or looks even slightly disinterested, you don't have that camaraderie, and you might not have that moment.
Katie, chime in over here. What do you think, kid?
About the call, I think it was great. I mean, I never thought I'd have a chance to even interact with him at all.
Oh, you're going to have many more opportunities to interact with him. I give you my word on that. Ask Dan, he'll tell you. I know everybody. Okay.
Yes.
There's not too many people
cool.
I don't.
Really cool. It's refreshing to hear that I have some time left in the sport. You know, I don't have to tap out right now. You know what I mean? I can still kind of push it.
I mean, you know, I'm looking at this photo behind you of you and your sensei and your karate gi. Now, I've seen, in the interest of full disclosure, I've seen a lot of stuff with you and your karate instructor, and you know, doing maneuvers. And I believe it's right above your head to the over your right shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah,
here?
yeah, right.
Oh.
That one, yeah.
Oh, this is Kyle. This is the owner of the MMA and sport that I'm at.
Oh.
These are his some of his students and his matches and stuff.
Oh, he's the owner.
Yeah,
I thought he was like your trainer, your sensei.
He is. He's given me my stripes. He's the coach. You know, he's now kind of taken me under his wing as far as getting me into the realm of things. Yeah. Bye, guys. Yeah. Thank you. Well, getting me into the realm of fighting and kind of being my guide, through all of this, because I didn't really know a lot about it other than.
How are you adjusting to the ground tactic, the ground style of wrestling?
I like it a lot. It lets me use my strength, which I have, because some of these guys, I have a feeling that like you roll with them, but they are technical, but they're not strong. Mm-hmm. So it's like I have the strength, so now I just need the technique. And if I can keep those two, together, I have a really good chance at, surviving on the ground and being able to.
Well, it's interesting, Dan. You and I had this discussion before. Katie brought up a really interesting point: technique and strength.
Right.
And sometimes technique versus strength.
Yep.
And Katie, I don't know how familiar you are with technical wrestling or even pro wrestling, but there's always been this, I don't want to call it a thing because it's not a thing, but there's always been this mindset, we'll call it that. The mindset that you're either technical or you're strong, but you can't be both.
Right.
I think that's pretty well been disproven now, but the old school mentality is something that's hard to get rid of, especially with old timers. And there's a lot of old timers in the world of wrestling and MMA.
Excuse
go ahead, Dan.
I was saying that goes to what Stephan Bonnar was talking about with jiu-jitsu. The narrative actually goes when the Gracies helped found the UFC. Yeah. Royce Gracie was picked to compete because he was the smallest brother. The idea he'll tell you he wasn't the best. They wanted to prove that jiu-jitsu could beat anybody, and what better way to do that than with the smallest, scraggliest looking guy folding. I mean, Ken Shamrock being a mountain of muscle, and Royce Gracie folded him in thirds. You got this idea that it works. Speaking of which, I was hoping, Katie, you could kind of touch.
Let me tell you something about Ken Shamrock. I know Ken Shamrock.
Never mind.
I've known Kenny a long time. What do you mean, never mind? I'm going to bitch slap.
No, it's okay. I mean,
I am going to ground and pound your ass, boy. I'm going to tell you what. Here's the thing about Kenny Shamrock. First of all, he could kick your ass, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But so could Katie, for that matter. But here's the thing. Kenny Shamrock is 56 years old, okay? And he's a slab of muscle, okay?
Right.
Kenny is chiseled, and he's always been chiseled. And on top of that, he's got not only the strength, but he's got the technical skill to back it. That's what I was saying when we talked to Stephan earlier. Initially, early on in his career, because Kenny was so jacked, he was blowing himself up because his muscles needed oxygen. They were sucking up oxygen.
Yeah.
It took him a good 3-4 years to learn how to adapt, to learn how to work with his muscle instead of against it. Right. That's the problem a lot of guys have. You even find it, Katie, you see it in bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Especially with these guys. There was a guy, and I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but there was a guy way back in the day. His name was Dorian Yates.
Yes, of course I remember him.
Okay. Dorian's been around a long time.
Very long time. One of the best, though.
Dorian is just, he's a giant muscle with a head, okay? I don't know how this guy walks without getting blown up, okay?
Right.
But what are you laughing at me for?
It's a funny narrative.
It's true.
But it's also funny that you thought there was a possibility anybody involved in bodybuilding wouldn't know who that is.
Right. Of course. He's older. He's definitely the older generation of, but that's when bodybuilding, in my opinion, was good. It was really at its peak.
Right. There was another guy, an old timer. His name was a Russian guy named Sergey Nureyev. No, or Sergey Nureyev.
Sergey.
Yeah. This guy was pumped, please. He was the pump. Are you kidding me? Huge guy. Yeah. He walked like this. He couldn't put his arms down.
Crazy.
Like when your lat spread is like naturally that big,
right?
That you walk like this. That's funky. Okay, I don't care who you are. Insane. That looks like fucking stupid. Okay.
That's kind of it's where it's turned. Unfortunately, these guys think the bigger the better, but that's not what I imagine bodybuilding being. I'm just more of the old school aesthetic approach where they have waistlines, they have fluidity to their physiques. It's not like a mutant like you're looking at, almost like it doesn't look real.
Well,
that's actually,
you and I the other night, we talked about this. You and I spoke the other night about
I was kind of while I got Katie on, I was actually hoping you could maybe get your thought on that. The example I used was when Schwarzenegger came back in 1980 and won his final Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
If you look at that was, I think, the peak of his fitness. If you look at that, 1980 Schwarzenegger wouldn't even place anywhere near the stage today.
How about that, Katie?
I'm wondering what your thoughts are when you have your Schwarzenegger, Franco Columbu, people like that who were amazingly in shape, but still looked, I don't want to say for lack of a better term, because it might sound horrible, but still looked human, versus these almost monster physiques people have today, the bulk and, where it just, what is your thought on that? Where bodybuilding kind of got to the point where you can't look natural and be anywhere near the main stage anymore.
Yeah. I'd have to kind of pin it a little bit on the judges for continuing to reward people that are coming in like that. You know what I'm saying? You. So that's kind of why I've decided to maybe kind of, come out of it for good. I don't want to say like 100% now, but I came out of it for that reason, because they keep rewarding these physiques.
Record, Katie. Let me go on record and tell the world that Katie Lee is, and I wrote it down and I read it the other night. Right. Listen to this one, Daniel. Katie Lee is, quote, the most aesthetically pleasing female bodybuilder in the world, unquote, and has the best peaks, whatever the hell peaks are. Okay? But I said it sounded dirty, but I don't want to see her peaks. Okay.
Right.
Now,
right.
Having said that, here's the interesting comparison. We talked the other night. Katie and I had this conversation about just exactly, Dan, what you're talking about. We had a conversation about a woman named Colette Jumon, is how you say her name. I was trying to figure out this woman's name all night long. It was driving me. Colette Jumon. This woman, she's the female version of these guys we're talking about that can't put their arms down.
Yeah.
She looks like a giant slab of meat. She doesn't look male or female. She looks gender neutral.
God, transgender.
And I'm sorry, Kate, but she does. She looks.
I know. Hey, it is what it is,
Yeah.
It's funny. You actually touched on the judges. The turning point, what a lot of people in bodybuilding point at, is Jay Cutler's first championship win. And Jay Cutler has since he's retired, he's gone on record as saying he feels bad that he's, that he was the catalyst for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's almost, you hear stories about the Kalashnikov, who regretted inventing the gun, where you're literally the defining moment of your career, and you look at it and go, damn, I wish I had done that differently. I'm wondering your thoughts on is there a chance outside of the business itself telling the judges to back off, where for it to change, or is it something that the bodybuilders themselves will never do?
It's I will blame it on the judges, and then I also want to kind of blame it on social media. I feel like it's glorified this freakish, you get more likes with the more veins you have, you get more likes if you have shredded glutes. And I'm like, okay, I understand we're supposed to be lean, but there is criteria for each of our categories. There's criteria that these judges need to follow. And my category, being a women's physique pro, we're not supposed to have striated glutes. We're not supposed to. We're supposed to be lean. We're supposed to have separation, but we're not supposed to have striations in our eyeballs. It's just, that's not criteria of our category. Right. So I do blame it on the judges for continuing to reward these, freakishly, shredded ladies. When you're like, okay, if you're doing female bodybuilding, I can understand. They need shredded glutes. They need shredded everything. But we all know what's going on with female bodybuilders and why they are at that level. So that's fine. But it's, it's the judges. And then
Katie, I have a question. Stop right there. And I want you to pick up right there. Because and I checked something out, and I was shocked to find out that there is no oversight committee. Right. There's no oversight in female bodybuilding. It's like run rampant, run amok.
Right.
There was a guy, and you might remember him, Katie, because he was probably around your generation, your age. He rest in peace. He's passed away now. His name was Richard Piani.
Yeah.
Rich. Do you know who he was?
5% Nutrition.
Did you know? Yeah. Did you know him?
Yeah, I've met him at a couple expos. I not personally, but just through the sport, I know him.
If you never met Rich Piani, would you please describe this man to someone who's never? And I'm just going to keep my mouth shut.
He looks like a mutant. He has extremely large arms. He did this whole segment, multiple segments on how to build your arms, because all guys want big arms. So he literally would eat a bunch of food in the gym, go pump out all these arm exercises, eat more meals in the gym, go pump more and he would be doing 36 sets of arms in the matter of an hour or two, eating, lifting, and you're just man, you're taking it really far. But people liked that. People liked that freakish, crazy looking approach. And he openly talked about gear. He never said, oh, no, I don't do it. He's like, yeah, I absolutely do it. Here's my, gear list. This is what I do. So at least he was honest about it. But I think, again, the social media and him blowing up like that really got these younger people that are coming up in the sport to say, oh, I have to be that. I have to look like that in order for me to be successful or popular, or for the judges to, place me. And it's that should not be how it is. It should be aesthetics.
It's a sad case, Katie, because Rich was a really good-looking guy.
Yeah.
Good-looking, almost like Hollywood kind of looks. A good-looking guy. By all accounts, a really generous guy, a nice guy. But what he put into his body and what he just was, oh, my God. The guy he had this company, Katie mentioned it a moment ago, called 5%.
Yep.
People don't realize that what he was consuming, we now found out, was crystallized glass. I'm not making this up. I swear to you, I'm not. Crystallized glass. Don't ask me how or why, but it makes your muscles bigger. I can't figure it out. I don't get it. I don't want to get it. Okay? It's just crazy. The things that people will do. There's another fella. I saw him last night, as a matter of fact, and I'm actually going to have him on the show. I reached out to his manager last night. I'm going to have this guy on the show. His name is Greg Valentino. You know who I'm talking about, Katie?
Yeah.
That was the man who's, they call him the man whose arms
exploded. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
I mentioned earlier.
That's crazy.
I mentioned earlier Jay Cutler's regret. That Rich Valentino, he was in that documentary Faster, Stronger, Better.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the look, and he said, he talked about himself, but he's like, he was criticizing his fans, basically like, women don't want that. Women look at my arms and think, ooh, that's gross. He's like, men are the ones that are coming up and high five at me and want to talk about the gym. He's like, I'm not pulling any women down looking like this. He goes like, this is disgusting. I can't. They talked about like I can't stop and all that, but he had a regret to his look too.
Yeah. It's intense. It's risky. And I just refuse to. I want to leave this industry with everything that I came with. I really do. So, exactly. And I refuse to take that route. And I wanted to show people that it was possible to do it,
exactly.
Extremely little assistance. Like you really shouldn't, again, you should already be in shape. You shouldn't need all these drugs to get yourself in shape. You should already be in shape because you like the lifestyle. You like the mindset, you like the challenge of the gym, you show up every day, you train every day, you do your cardio like you're supposed to. You're not just doing bodybuilding because you think it's a trend. And that's what I think happened, is that a lot of people just thought it was this popular thing to do. So now everybody's a bodybuilder, and you're like, how are you like, what makes you a bodybuilder? You know what I'm saying? Like, you eat like shit, you take a bunch of drugs. That's not a bodybuilder to me. Arnold was a bodybuilder, and he lived it, breathed it. Like it was his life, and sleep, morning, noon, night. That's what bodybuilding was to me, at least when I was growing up. Arnold was it, he was the man. And it's like, I wish these younger guys coming up into it would kind of bring that look back. You know what I'm saying? Like kind of go back in time a little bit to bring back they're still separated. They're still lean. They're still extremely muscular.
Right.
They just don't look freakish. You know what I'm saying? And Arnold said like he did, what was it? He did D-ball and like one other drug, and that was like his only thing. Like he stuck to that, and that was it. And now you have all these guys doing. The list is so long I can't even name it. But again, less is more. Less is more. They think more is more, but less is more. You see what I'm saying?
That's the problem. People don't understand. Less is more.
Yep. How many times have we heard that on the show?
I know.
Everything life.
Who says that, Dan? Who's famous for that?
All the time.
I'm always telling people less is more.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to Dan talking. Less is more.
I was just about to say that. Less, especially when it comes to how many
here's the thing. But no, seriously though. But here's the thing. Katie brought up a really interesting point. She's talking about putting the work in. When Stephan was on, she talked about putting the work in, going to the gym. You don't go to the gym to hang out, to socialize. You don't go to the gym because it's the fashionable thing to do. You go to the gym to get sweaty and tired. That's why you go to the gym. Okay.
Take a selfie.
Exactly. The other thing you don't go to the gym to do is to smoke a cigarette and shove a needle in your ass. And there's a douchebag that I'm going to call her out right now that does that. And her name's Brandy May. And I don't like you, Brandy, whoever the hell you are. And I'm calling you out. Okay? So if your idea of getting jacked up is sticking a needle in your ass, do it on somebody else's time and stop affecting the youth of America, because it's not cool.
Right. Exactly.
Having said that, I'm getting off my soapbox now, because Daniel, you know what, boy? I didn't
say anything.
You didn't have to. You gave me that eat shit and die look, okay? I know that look. Because you give it to me at least once a show. So what's next for Katie Lee? What's happening with you, kid?
Hopefully I'm doing some jiu-jitsu tournaments here coming up with all this craziness is settled down and they're allowing things to open back up. I'm really hoping I can get some competitions in before the end of the year. Maybe some Muay Thai too. I had a charity boxing event that was supposed to happen in September that they ended up canceling, which actually got me into more of the martial arts side of things instead of just jiu-jitsu. I'm like, oh, if I'm doing this boxing event, well, I want to win. I don't want to lose. So I just started training boxing, and then Muay Thai, and then it all kind of just fell into one another. But I'm hoping to hit some of those by the end of the year. And then 2021, I don't know. Everybody wants me to do bodybuilding again, but truthfully, I can't make that call right now. I'm going to see how the
something. I got to tell you something. You know, if you're in shape, you're going to have a level of muscularity anyway. You're a lifelong athlete. You're not going to lose that. Okay, maybe so you go from having 40-inch biceps down to 25-inch. Okay, so you lose a little, okay? But I think
I've already lost weight here, just training. I mean, here doing martial arts like 6 days a week now, it's like I've already lost 10 pounds. So I'm like, Jesus, I look like I'm 10 weeks out from a show. So if I wanted to do a show next year, I wouldn't really need to prep very long. I could just tighten it up, you know, and that's kind of a good place to be because I'm like, okay, I'm 10 weeks out. You know, I could do the show if I wanted to, but I can still train jiu-jitsu. I can still train everything that I want to train. And I don't have to diet. And that's really the major thing. I'm just like, I'm so done with dieting.
Yeah. And you know what? There are some people that are just like that. They're, you know, we see it in wrestling all the time. People that are just genetically gifted, you know, God bless them. Yeah. Well, listen, when you're ready to do it, if and when that show happens, I'd like you to come back on and promote it and talk about it. And I will, of course, be in touch with you because we're buds now.
Yes.
Cool.
Thank you.
And anytime. Listen, you got a platform here. Dan, so we're going to say goodbye. Anything you want to ask her before we let her go?
No, I mean, it was a great talk. And I know, like Angelo said, we'll definitely have you back. And as your career moves forward, we'll definitely have more questions and more stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I have to have her back anyway because I promised her two things. I promised Katie. I promised her Stephan Bonnar, and I promised her Dan the Beast Severn. And I spoke to Dan Severn, and I actually spoke to him, and I didn't go through an agent. I called him up on the phone. Thank you. Shut, Dan, you better.
No, that's a funny story. I'm not laughing at you, laughing with you on
Katie,
that one.
I want you to know what I have to go through every week with this guy. Every week. This is every week, okay?
It's like a married couple.
Every week he tortures me, this guy. Torments me all the time. Anyway, so Dan the Beast Severn will be here in about 3 weeks. So I am going to let you go. Katie Lee, thank you so much for joining us. Keep in touch. We're fam now, okay?
Yes, we are. You got my info. Right. Just reach out. Thank you for your time, too.
Thank you.
Take care. Katie Lee, everybody. All right, Dan. We are supposed to have Pat Miletich is supposed to have called 20 minutes ago. But he has, as of yet, not called. So I have to look at your face for it. Anyway, actually, this will give us a chance to catch up. Apparently, some interesting developments in wrestling.
Yes,
Word has it that Renee Young, her contract is up and she is not renewing, and she is leaving WWE for pastures yet unknown, so say some people.
Yep.
Other people say she knows exactly where she's going. And evidently she may either be headed to the heavy money, says ESPN.
Yeah, I mean, it is, and you saw that with Talking Smack and some of the backstage segments she did. Yeah. She's phenomenal. Wrestling aside, she's a phenomenal television talent when it comes to the presenting and questions. Sure. And I know obviously there's stories of her going to linked with AEW where her husband is, which I think would be a huge win for them because their interview backstage stuff sucks. And she completely breathed new life in. But I think, especially now with ESPN in the process of rebranding, I think having a strong female lead for a show would be a brilliant move on their part.
Well, and the other thing, and I think, boy, I would love to. I tell you what, there's not too much I'm split on when it comes to wrestling, because we know it's hit or miss with wrestling anyway.
Right.
But I am split on certain talents, because there are certain individuals who do lend, by their presence alone, who do lend credibility and credence to the genre. Renee's one of those people. She approaches an interview like an interview,
right?
Like we do.
Yeah.
Not just somebody going, oh well, what are you doing tonight? And what are you doing tonight? And how are you tonight?
Yeah, she definitely, for lack of a better description, she presents it as a real interview. You genuinely believe that she's asking questions.
She came from that field, though.
You believe that the person she's talking to has never heard these questions before,
exactly.
And she has, unlike the big titted boppers that wrestling loves packing in the back now, she does follow-ups and she definitely goes after them. It reminds me a lot of like a Gene Okerlund, where she follows up and you get that feeling of this is like a real interview, not just like you said, oh, you just won the title. Tell me how you feel.
Yeah.
And then they cut a promo and the camera pans away. You don't even know the person's holding a microphone. Like, I think whatever she wants to do, I know she'll be good at it. That's for darn sure.
Oh, absolutely. No question about that. She's a pro. She's a consummate pro. And she does come from the world of television. We should point out that she does not come from the wrestling world. She comes from the world of television, journalism.
Correct.
And news. And she's very good at it. And it shows. I think the fact that she has a very, at home, down home, familial feel is a super A+ for her. It's also a super A+ for whoever gets a hold of her, because they're going to have a winner.
No, absolutely.
The only problem I see with her going to AEW is it's a wrestling company. And wrestling companies will do what they always do to personalities. They will tie your hands to a certain extent, to a large extent, in fact. And you'll be constricted to the routine, and you know what the routine is.
Yeah, I worry too, seeing the involvement Brandy Rhodes has had as one of the main television, like time on television. I also worry that she goes to AEW, she ends up as an on-screen character that detracts from her ability to do backstage stuff.
Dan, and that's exactly, you actually pinpointed exactly what my fear is, that she will become a character. And I don't want to see her as a character. I want to see her as a legitimate, bona fide journalist in some regard. Mm-hmm. I think if the heavy money wins out, and like I said, the heavy money has her going to ESPN, if in fact she does, kudos. Win-win for everybody. It's a win all around. It's a win for wrestling. It's a win for ESPN. It's a win for her career and her husband. Mm-hmm. It's a win for her bank account. Huge.
Very much so. Yeah, I guarantee she'll make more money at ESPN than she would at AEW.
Yeah, and don't forget, let's also remember, see, history, sometimes, the benefits of youth don't always serve you, because people will tell you that, if she leaves WWE, she'll be forgotten. Nobody will remember who she is, and blah, blah, blah. That's the benefits of youth is that, well, let's talk about, before I tell you about the benefits of youth, let's talk about the misgivings of youth, okay? You're not smart enough to see ahead. That's the first thing. Number two, you haven't learned from history because you're not old enough to know history. That's number two. But the third most important thing is understanding the dynamics of the wrestling business and its octopus-like tentacles, especially WWE. They've got their hands in ESPN. They've got their hands in every promotion, probably except for AEW, and There are some people who say that they may have their hands in that too that nobody knows about. The conspiracy theorists, have had a look. Let's blame Vince Russo for that one. Let's go ahead and do it because he's already put it out there.
Yep.
So, but anyway, no, I think it's a win-win no matter what. I really do. I really think it's going to benefit everybody.
Oh yeah.
But and I think that she worked hard to get where she's going. The sky's the limit for this woman. It really is. So what else we have going on? Oh, speaking, you mentioned a moment ago, cut a promo. Speaking of cut a promo, how's Jason doing?
He's good. I actually I saw him today. We wish him the best in their recovery there. Plan is to be back next week. So, because I will be off next week. So, we keep the family together and everything looks like it's working out.
Okay. Terrific.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's been a while since we had a cut a promo episode and, given the fact that Jason has things to deal with right now, and that's his private stuff, we're not ever going to go into that. But we will resume with Cut a Promo, which has become a popular addition to the Wrestling with the Future lineup. So you're on vacay starting next week, but we got some exciting stuff coming up. Brother, we got a good one. I don't know if I mentioned this to you because you weren't here the last time, but we got a super September starting out. Incredible September. I'll tell you who's coming here. We got, the first week of September is going to be crazy.
Oh, that's the big one. September 1st. I made sure to come back just in time for that.
Wait, the 1st and the 3rd. Oh, You don't know about the 3rd yet?
No, I do not.
Well, I'm going to tell you who we got. Okay. Here's what we got going on. September 1st, of course. We've talked about it. We've got the return of Vince Russo. He'll be here. And he will be joined by not only the happy haberdasher, Dan the Man, not only by the incomparable Angelo DeCipio, but he'll also be joined by Stephen Plim. Who, you ask? Who is Stephen Plim? Stephen Plim was the best friend and manager of the legendary ukulele-playing entertainer Tiny Tim. Tiptoe Through the Tulips. That Tiny Tim. And he will be here, and we have a 4-part show scheduled with Stephen Plim. He will discuss his relationship with Tiny Tim, how they met. He will talk about his life in Hollywood and the members of the Hollywood A-list, the elite, that he had the pleasure of representing as a manager and agent. 40 plus years in the entertainment business. He's got a treasure chest of stories, and we will probably hear most, if not all of them, in a 4-part episode. That said, on September the 3rd, this is a big one. Famed mafia author George Anastasia will be here. And he will talk about life in the mob. And we will talk about everyone from, from Al Capone to Nicky Scarfo to John Gotti to...
Now, as a... and Angelo, you're in the same boat, as an Italian grew up in New Jersey. He's not going to have much to talk about. The mob is a myth.
I know. Well, I want to see if George can shed some light on it. I'm just telling you what I've heard, okay? I'm just telling you. I don't know for sure. I'm just telling you. Right. Anyway, but here's he is the author of some 30 plus books on organized crime and other subject as well. George Anastasia is a former Philadelphia Inquirer, former Daily News, I believe Daily News. Am I right on that? No, former Philadelphia Inquirer editor and reporter. He's been with that paper for a very long time. He has left the paper. He is now with, I believe, Simon and Schuster Publishers, or we'll find out. I hope I have that right. But George will be here to talk about everyone from John Gotti to what's his name? Michael Franchise is another guy we'll talk about. John Elite, and a host of other famous and or infamous mafia characters, or I should say alleged mafia characters or alleged organized crime, because where they tell me there's no such thing as the mafia. Yeah, so we have to say organized crime for the record, but that will be an interesting show. That one will definitely have a legal and age disclaimer on it for certain. That one will have a disclaimer. Now, you and I talked today, Dan, in the interest of full disclosure. We got some other shows coming up that require disclaimers. So tell everybody what we're doing.
Well, I know you mentioned on this interview here that we've got Dan Severn, and you also obviously you have plans to bring Stephan Bonnar and Katie Lee back. And give me a second, I got my notes here.
You're getting as bad as me, brother.
Hey, well, I mean, you book a lot at the same time. We did talk about,
look, when it rains, it pours.
Right. There will be in the current environment that we're in. We plan on having a show focusing on free speech and the evolution of what the social media is dubbed cancel culture.
On social media.
Very much so.
We're calling this episode on social media. And for the record, just so everybody knows, my Facebook page is inactive. I am not using it. I am going strictly through the Wrestling with the Future page. I have not closed out my page. It's still there. It's still visible. But you will not see any posts from me. I won't be using that page. But I need to keep it open because my family regards, listen to me. They rely upon me for their Slotomania points. So stop laughing.
No, it's funny.
I have to keep it open so I have access to my Slotomania. How
I remember
is this shit?
I was in the Navy when I signed up for Facebook because everybody was phasing out of MySpace, and
MySpace.
I knew I must have known a dozen or so people on the ship that got into Facebook just because people needed them for points, or this ninja game we were playing, or Farmville, or whatever the other one was. Like, I'm not going to use it. I don't care. Just log on every day and send me a tractor,
That's funny. Farmville. Oh my God. I remember that's crazy. Well, Dan, we did a great show tonight.
It was a lot of fun.
An hour and a half straight up. That's beautiful. Well, you can catch us next week. Our guest next week will be, who we got next week? I don't even know. Who the hell do we got? Did I forget already? I put my calendar away. Are you kidding me? I did. I put my freaking, I can't believe I did that.
Silence.
I cannot believe I did that. Summer Gun. Oh, I remember. Okay. It looks like it's going to be. Let me see. And I just wrote this down. Oh, Daniel Lowe, the guy that was supposed to be here to talk about Jesse James. I knew I had something else to tell you. Summer Gun. Those of you who tuned in looking for Daniel Lowe and did not find him, well, there's why. He wasn't available. They discovered a lost city somewhere, and that's all I know. I don't know if they found Atlantis. or some place that Copernicus talked about in the Odyssey, or they may have found Homer himself. I don't know. Dan the man can better. Why are you looking at me? Look, I don't know anything about Greek mythology. Okay.
Hey, you.
It was a guy though, right? Copernicus.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
But Copernicus wasn't Greek though. Homer wrote the Iliad. You're.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Now there was the Iliad, and there was one called the Odyssey.
The Odyssey. Yeah.
Now, who wrote that? Was that like a book, or was that like a show?
They were the parts of the same story. I think what you were thinking about was I believe it was Plato that wrote about Atlantis. He described it as being as big as
Plato. Yes.
Yeah.
Plato.
Well,
the father of modern medicine. Yes, Plato.
Because that's where some of the, I don't want to say debate or argument comes from, is he described it as big as what was coastal Turkey and Greece, and people thought what he meant was in between Turkey and Greece. So that's why there's a lot of theory about Atlantis being in the Mediterranean.
True. They said that there was a place off the Isle of Crete called, if I remember the name of it, you probably remember. It was a small moon-shaped island.
Mm-hmm. It didn't used to be moon-shaped.
What was it called?
I said it didn't used to be moon-shaped. You're talking about the sunken city?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's. I butcher it, but yeah,
I don't know nothing about it. You know what, Dan? This is a good place to go home. Let's call it home. Let's go home. Dan,
sounds good to me.
Have a good one, brother.
You too, Angela.
For Dan the Man Sebastiano, for Wrestling with the Future, I am Angelo DeCipio. Take care. Happy wrestling, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.